All right, I didn't expect to do a part 3, but it cut me off, so here's where we're at. So, the rise of a communist bloc in Europe and Asia brought renewed determination by Washington to control its Latin American backyard. So again, we saw the Western Hemisphere as ours, all the way back to that Monroe Doctrine, almost 208 years ago or so that we put that out. We still believe that to be true. Okay, this is our backyard. So wherever social democratic or radical leftist regimes came to power and might threaten the business climate, remember it's very economically driven for U.S. companies, Washington will respond by backing right-wing opponents to overthrow them. Very much like in Cuba, where we support Batista, or very much like in Iran, where we support the Shah, where he might not be very good for the people there, but as long as it's good for our bottom line, we're going to go along with it. So, examples. In 1954, like I said, the CIA is going to help oust the liberal reform government of Jacobo Arbenz in Guatemala. In 1961, the U.S. CIA is going to help, or try to, overthrow the Castro regime with the Bay of Pigs invasion. And we'll talk more about that when we get to JFK. In 1963, the CIA and the Marines will back a military coup to overthrow the left-leaning, democratically elected Juan Bosch government in the Dominican Republic. 2 years later, we invade the DR again to ensure that Bosch doesn't return to power. In the 1970s, the CIA and the U.S. military will support coups to overthrow the Chilean government under Salvador Allende and the Peruvian government under Juan Velasco Alvarado. In the 1980s, the CIA and the U.S. military will support a coup to overthrow the Nicaraguan government of Daniel Ortega. In 1983, direct military intervention, invasion in Grenada under Reagan. And then in 1989, under President Bush I, we will invade Panama. So some examples of people. Here we got Jacobo Arbenz on the left, Juan Bosch on the right. On the left here, Salvador Allende in Chile. Daniel Ortega from Nicaragua there on the right. All right, moving on from some of that Cold War stuff, we're going to do some activities, some videos that are going to help put that in your brain a little bit more. So, entertainment in the 40s and 50s are going to help show competing cultures. Remember, we talked way back when with urbanization that we're going to start getting more distinctly conservative and progressive, or conservative and liberal, I should say, because there are progressives in both sides of the political spectrum. So, this is all going to play out on TV, in music, in movies, right? This culture clash. So in television, by the end of the 1950s, over 90% of Americans had TVs in their homes. TV gave Americans an image of what their life should be like. And that's something we don't really focus on very much when we talk about entertainment. But very much, especially on the major networks, right? Like ABC or NBC or CBS or Fox. These sitcoms, these dramas, these things that we still watch, kind of try to reinforce what our lives should be like. In the 50s, it was very much about what proper gender roles were. So as a man or a woman, what you're supposed to do, what you're expected to do, what your ambition should be. Okay, at this point in the 50s, and you'll do an activity on housewives in the 50s, women weren't expected to be out of the home. They were expected to enjoy just being housewives. There's nothing wrong with being a housewife if that's what you want, but they weren't given the option to do other things. So shows like Leave It to Beaver are going to show us what family life should be like. Right? A husband that works, a wife that's at home doing the laundry and the cleaning and cooking, right? Some mischievous kids and a dog or whatever, right? It's showing us what your life should look like. Rock and roll is going to become very popular, right? The young kids are going to get into rock and roll, okay? It's going to become another clash between rock and classical music, right? It's going to feature loud, heavy beats, power, and borrowed a lot of stuff from jazz and blues, more black music, okay? It's going to be alternative, it's going to be provocative, it's going to be loud, and you're going to get all sorts of overreactions to that as well. And then movies to help show this, right? Two of the biggest movies of the 40s and 50s, Rebel Without a Cause, okay? Very much sort of in your face, very much sort of rock and roll-ish. On the other side, the Ten Commandments, right? A very biblical, very much more conservative sort of a thing, right? So it kind of showed the culture clash. So, television programs and programming in the 50s showed or shows like Leave It to Beaver showed how family life should be and reinforced two correct things. What did it reinforce? Did it reinforce A, gender roles, B, proper ambitions, C, etiquette, or D, community? Two of these are correct. So some pictures here on the left, we got kids watching TV, mom turning it on. In the middle, we got Elvis there, rock and roll, and on the right, Leave It to Beaver. The kid in the back left He's the beaver. Always getting in trouble, that beaver. All right, last question. So what was the popular music form with a loud and heavy beat that was made popular in the 1950s? Was it reggae, country, rock and roll, or jazz? That's the end.